This video is brought to you by Change Over Time, since we don't have any sponsors yet. Pictures of cats were basically Medusa. Persians figured that painting their shields with pictures of cats would make Egyptians think twice before throwing spears at them. And they were right, proving their idea by winning the Battle of Pelusium. Egyptians loved their cats, the spirit animal of goddess Bastet, who was in charge of keeping houses safe from disease and other important things. One of the many ways by which people could offend the goddess was to harm one of her precious cats. As such, doing so was punishable by death. When Egyptian houses caught fire, they would save their cats before saving themselves. On the tamer side, if a cat died in a house of natural causes, everyone living there had to shave their eyebrows. Fast forward about 1700 years and we find that people in other parts of the world had quite different ideas about cats. Pope Gregory IX believed that black cats carried the spirit of Satan himself. Since then, black cats have symbolized bad luck or a curse to people not only in Europe but throughout the world. There are other speculations about where this black cat being bad luck thing came from, but we're gonna focus on this one because this is my video and I can do whatever I want. Cats are like M&Ms. Not everyone loves them, but they serve an essential purpose. They bring happiness. Cats catch cockroaches, snakes, scorpions, 4 billion birds, 22 billion rats, mice, bats, and other small mammals every year. At least that is what the combined research data from Smithsonian Institution and US Fish and Wildlife Service say. Back in the mid-1200s, Pope Gregory's condemnation of cats is definitely connected to the decline in cat population and the explosive growth of rat population. In 1145 AD, Pope Gregory IX was born as Ugolino di Conti. He rose through the ranks of deacon, bishop, dean, protector until he was 80 years old when, in the papal election of 1227, he was elevated to the papacy. He decided to switch it up, using the much easier to pronounce and remember name, Gregory, after Saint Gregory, who had a monastery named after him where Gregory, the Pope, not the monastery, the saint or the 8 other popes named Gregory before him, was coronated. Even for modern times, that is a rather ripe old age to dress up in choir robes, hold the papal ferula, the crooked stuff with the cross on top, and throw around peace signs every which way, in other words, become the Pope. One of his first acts as Pope was expanding the Inquisition powers throughout the whole of Germany so that Konrad von Marburg could fulfill his inquisitional duties of heresy suppression. The goal was to bring order and legality to the process of dealing with heresy because mobs of people were just burning anyone accused of being heretics without a trial. Condemning cats was not the only noteworthy thing Pope Gregory did. He was also a lawyer who took away the title of Holy Roman Emperor from Frederick II for being late to the Sixth Crusade. To get back his crown, Frederick went to the Holy Land and managed to take over Jerusalem, but Pope Gregory still did not trust or forgive him. So Frederick II came with his army to overthrow the Pope, but before he could do so, in 1441, after holding on to the position for 14 years, Pope Gregory IX kicked the bucket at 94 years old. But really, he's mostly remembered for issuing the Decretales, pontifical letters containing a decision that recognized the whole library of Catholic laws, and for starting the Papal Inquisition. Oh, and one of those Decretales said that all the Jewish people would have to remain in political servitude until Judgment Day, and all copies of their holy book, the Talmud, were confiscated. Feline-human relations deteriorated sometime in the early 1230s. It was Pope Gregory's past as a lawyer that connected him to his acts of justice within the church. It was his distaste for cats that penned the Vox in Rama, also known as the Bull. This bull declared cats as the instruments of Satan and set medieval Europe on a great cat purge with special attention paid to black cats who were particularly Luciferian. So cats went from being the targets of pagan worship to being subjects for Catholic popes to write letters about. Medieval people were indeed superstitious and cats are great, but let's face it, they're pricks. We can make animals do what we like. We can teach horses to be alright, dogs to fetch, parrots to speak, and ravens to hold grudges. But we can't really make a cat do anything, and that's because its body is infested with the spirit of the morning star himself. Inspired by Pope Gregory IX's bull, Europe went on a cat extermination spree. Then, when the plague-infested fleas hitched a ride on some rats, there were no mousers left to keep the disease in check. By Pope Gregory's holy and official decree, there was a target on the head of every black cat. Well, maybe. Really though, this disease is caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis and is transmitted by fleas. Potentially infected flea hosts include rats, dogs, cats, humans, and whatever else fleas like to nosh on. Asia was ravaged by the plague before it ever made its way to Europe, and Asia is where cats originated from. Egypt, the land of cat lovers, also suffered from the plague. neither of these areas were under the control of the Holy Roman Empire, so they didn't have to listen to the Pope or anything he may or may not have said about a no-cat policy. Europe didn't just get the plague once. They had outbreaks at least once per generation until the 1700s. Europe couldn't have kept its cat population depleted for nearly 500 years. If that had been possible, India would have had a handle on its feral cat population. We wouldn't have had to worry about cats sneaking into our kitchens and eating our fish. Female cats, on an average, have 4 to 6 kittens per litter, 2 to 3 litters per year, and they start pumping them out as young as 4 months old. This means a single mommy cat, with the help of a daddy cat, can produce as many as 100 kittens in her lifetime. In just 7 years, one pair of cats can account for 420,000 or more kittens. It's an exponential thing. Romans, before the whole Holy Empire thing, brought cats to Europe from Egypt, and for a long time, cats enjoyed a decent reputation, probably because they were useful to farmers. They kept the nasty vermins away from crops. Cats are nature's perfect solution. They are pure OG carnivores. Cats cannot eat anything that isn't meat, except eating your grass plants and sometimes their own tails. This is because cats require energy drinks. I mean, the amino acid taurine, without which cats will go blind. Because being a vegetarian is unnatural for cats, under the Animal Welfare Act, people are prohibited from putting their dogs or cats on vegetarian diet. Let's take a look at what Pope Gregory IX actually said about cats in his bull. Afterward, they sit down to a meal, and when they have arisen from it, the certain statue, which is usually in a set of this kind, a black cat descends backward, with its tail erect, first the novice, then the master, then each one of the other who is worthy and perfect, kiss the cat on its buttocks. Then, each to his place, and speaking certain responses, they incline their heads towards the cat. So what is happening in this text? There is some talk about a black cat and their buttocks, but what Pope Gregory is actually talking about here is a ritual carried out by a satanic sect, as reported by Konrad von Marburg, the worm-tongued inquisitor guy from earlier. This dude's job was to rid Germany of heretics. So, he had plenty of reason to stroke the Pope's fears of heretical activity, because job security. That, or he was off his rocker. Either way, his account can't be accurate. Statues of black cats don't magically come to life, and you surely can't, nor should, get a cat to walk backward and let you kiss its buttocks. So were cats worshipped by satanic cults and pagans? Yes, Pope Gregory was not wrong in stating that. However, the bull does not state that Catholics across Europe should follow a no-cat policy to stop Satan and stick to it for the next 115 years. It also doesn't say anything about the plague, but they probably didn't have much to do with each other. Because correlation doesn't imply causation. It was just a letter sent to Emperor Frederick II of Germany to kick off the Bosnian Crusade. If you don't want people to remember you for the wrong things, like the letter you sent about kissing cat buttocks, you should check out our sponsor. I mean, subscribe to our channel. Okay, bye.